The moment I walked into my childhood home holding my $5 million lottery ticket, I expected celebration. Instead, my parents sat me down with stone-cold faces and delivered an ultimatum that shattered my world: give half the winnings to my unemployed brother, Tyler, or pack my bags. When I refused, they actually tried to destroy what they thought was my ticket. But as I watched them tear it to pieces, I couldn't stop laughing. Because what they destroyed wasn't my real winning ticket at all. 3 weeks before that devastating confrontation, I was just another 28-year-old woman grinding through another ordinary Tuesday at Henderson & Associates, the mid-sized accounting firm, where I'd been crunching numbers for the past 4 years. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I stared at spreadsheets filled with other people's financial dreams and mistakes. My cubicle walls were decorated with a single photo of my college graduation and a motivational calendar that seemed increasingly ironic with each passing day. During my lunch break, I decided to walk to Murphy's Corner store instead of eating another sad desk salad. The October air carried the scent of fallen leaves, and something about the crisp afternoon made me feel adventurous. Murphy's was one of those old-fashioned neighborhood shops that sold everything from lottery tickets to homemade sandwiches. The elderly owner, Frank Murphy, had known my family for decades. "Anissa, how's the number-crunching business treating you?" Frank asked as the bell above the door chimed my entrance. "Can't complain, Mr. Murphy, though sometimes I wonder if there's more to life than balancing other people's books." He chuckled while restocking candy bars. "You know what they say about dreaming big?" That's when I noticed the Powerball display. The jackpot had climbed to $53 million. On impulse, I pulled out $5 and decided to buy a ticket. Instead of using random numbers, I chose dates that meant something to me: my birthday, my parents' anniversary, Tyler's birthday, and the day I graduated college. Looking back, the irony of using family dates is almost painful. Frank handed me the ticket with a wink. "May Lady Luck smile on you, dear." I folded it carefully into my wallet behind my driver's license and forgot about it completely. For the next 3 weeks, that little piece of paper sat there while I continued my routine of work, occasional drinks with friends, and dutiful Sunday dinners with my family. Life felt predictable and safe, if not particularly exciting. The night everything changed started like any other. I was sprawled on my couch in my small downtown apartment, wearing my favorite oversized college sweatshirt and fuzzy socks, mindlessly scrolling through social media while a cooking show played in the background. A news notification popped up about the Powerball drawing, and curiosity made me search for the winning numbers. My heart stopped when I saw them: 7, 14, 23, 31, 42, with the Powerball number 19. I knew those numbers. I scrambled for my wallet, hands shaking as I unfolded my ticket. 7, 14, 23, 31, 42, 19. I checked again and again. I Googled the numbers, screenshot them, compared them side by side with my ticket. Every number matched perfectly. I had won $53 million, which after taxes would be about $32 million if I took the lump sum. But my ticket said $5 million because that was my share after the annuity calculations. My first instinct was to call someone to scream with joy to share this incredible moment, but something held me back. Maybe it was years of watching my family's dynamics, or maybe it was pure intuition, but I decided to keep quiet while I figured out what to do next. Over the next few days, I researched everything about lottery winners. I read horror stories about families torn apart by sudden wealth, about people who lost everything because they trusted the wrong people. One article particularly caught my attention. It was about lottery scams and how criminals would steal or duplicate winning tickets. That's when I got the idea that would ultimately save me. Using my graphic design skills from college and access to high-quality printers at work, I created a perfect replica of my winning ticket. It took several attempts to match the exact paper quality font and layout. I even artificially aged it to match the original's wear. The fake ticket was so convincing that even I had trouble telling the difference. Meanwhile, I quietly moved my real winning ticket to a safety deposit box at First National Bank, taking the day off work to handle the paperwork. I told the bank manager it was important family documents, and she assured me they would be completely secure. The twist that would change everything came from my decision to research lottery winner protection strategies. I wasn't just being paranoid, I was being smart. And that smartness would soon expose my family's true colors in ways I never imagined possible. Growing up in the Sullivan household meant learning early that love came with conditions, and those conditions always seemed to favor my older brother Tyler. While I was earning straight A's and working part-time jobs to save for college, Tyler was charming his way out of every consequence and convincing our parents that his failures were everyone else's fault. Tyler, now 31, had perfected the art of being professionally unemployed. He'd had dozens of jobs over the years: retail, food service, construction sales, even a brief stint as a personal trainer. Each position ended the same way, with Tyler explaining how his boss was incompetent, his coworkers were jealous, or the customers were impossible. Our parents, Margaret and Robert, accepted every excuse and provided endless financial support. My mother, Margaret, worked as a dental hygienist and had always been the family's emotional mediator, constantly making excuses for Tyler's behavior while expecting me to be understanding and mature. She had this way of sighing deeply whenever Tyler's latest crisis arose, as if his problems were natural disasters beyond anyone's control. My father, Robert, managed inventory at a mid-sized manufacturing company and prided himself on being practical and logical. Yet when it came to Tyler, his logic disappeared completely. He'd lecture me about fiscal responsibility while handing Tyler $100 bills for gas money that somehow never made it to the gas tank. The breaking point came 6 months before my lottery win during a family barbecue at my parents' house. I'd arrived early to help my mother prepare side dishes when I noticed Tyler behaving strangely. He kept checking his phone nervously and excusing himself to take mysterious calls. When he thought no one was looking, I caught him going through my mother's purse. I followed him upstairs and discovered him in my parents' bedroom, rifling through my father's dresser drawer, where they kept emergency cash. He was stuffing bills into his pocket when I cleared my throat. "What are you doing, Tyler?" He spun around, his face flushing red. "Anissa, you scared me. Dad said I could borrow some money." By sneaking around and taking it without asking, Tyler's charming mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something desperate underneath. "Look, you don't understand. I'm in a tight spot right now, and I need this money for something important." Important? Like what? Another failed business venture? Another investment opportunity that's definitely going to make you rich this time? His jaw tightened. "You've always been jealous of me. You know that Mom and Dad try to include you, but you're just bitter because things come easier to me." That conversation opened my eyes to Tyler's real nature. Over the following weeks, I paid closer attention to his behavior and started noticing patterns. He'd visit our parents multiple times per week, always leaving with cash food or having bills paid on his behalf. Our mother would mention needing to postpone her dental work while our father complained about overtime being cut. Yet somehow they always found money for Tyler's emergencies. The truth became clear when I offered to help my parents with their taxes that spring. While organizing their financial documents, I discovered they'd withdrawn over $20,000 from their retirement savings in the past year. When I asked about it, they became evasive and defensive. "Everyone goes through rough patches," my mother said, not meeting my eyes. "Family helps family." "But Mom, you're risking your own security. What happens when you want to retire?" "Tyler's going to pay it back when his situation improves," my father insisted. "He's working on some big opportunities." I realized my parents had been systematically depleting their savings to enable Tyler's lifestyle. They'd convinced themselves they were helping him through temporary difficulties, but Tyler had no intention of changing. He'd found a reliable source of money that required no effort, no responsibility, and no accountability. The most shocking discovery came when I found credit card statements showing my parents had taken cash advances to give Tyler money. They were paying interest on money they'd borrowed to support their adult son's refusal to work consistently. Meanwhile, I'd been contributing to their household expenses whenever possible and had never asked for financial help since graduating college. The toxic dynamic became impossible to ignore. Tyler was the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was expected to be endlessly understanding and supportive. His failures were met with sympathy and financial rescue, while my successes were taken for granted. If I ever needed help, I was told to be more independent and responsible. This pattern of favoritism had shaped every major decision in our family for years. Tyler received a car for his 16th birthday, while I was told cars had to be earned. He got his college tuition paid while I worked multiple jobs and took out loans. When he dropped out junior year, there were no consequences. When I graduated with honors, the celebration lasted about 5 minutes before the focus shifted back to Tyler's latest crisis. Understanding this dynamic made my decision to hide my lottery win feel not just smart, but necessary. I knew exactly what would happen if I announced it. Tyler's problems would become my responsibility, and my good fortune would be treated as the family's salvation rather than my personal achievement. The twist I hadn't anticipated was discovering just how deep Tyler's problems really went and how far my parents were willing to go to protect him from consequences. 3 weeks after winning the lottery, I finally decided it was time to tell my family. I'd spent those weeks consulting with financial advisors, lawyers, and accountants, setting up trusts and investment strategies to protect my winnings. The real ticket remained safely locked away, while the fake one stayed in my wallet, waiting for the moment I'd need it. On a crisp Sunday morning in November, I drove to my parents' house for what I thought would be a celebration. The suburban neighborhood looked peaceful, with neat lawns covered in fallen leaves and pumpkins still decorating front porches from Halloween. My childhood home sat on a corner lot, a modest 2-story colonial with blue shutters that my father repainted every few years with religious dedication. I found my parents in the kitchen sharing coffee and reading different sections of the newspaper. This had been their Sunday ritual for as long as I could remember. My mother looked up with a warm smile that made my heart ache, knowing what was about to happen. Anissa, perfect timing. I just pulled cinnamon rolls out of the oven. "Where's Tyler?" I asked, noticing his absence. "Still sleeping," my father replied without looking up from the sports section. "He got in late last night." I took a deep breath, my hand instinctively moving to my wallet where the fake ticket waited. Actually, I have some news to share. Something pretty incredible happened to me. Both parents set down their newspapers, sensing the importance in my voice. My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "What is it, honey? You look nervous." 3 weeks ago, I bought a lottery ticket on impulse. Just $5 numbers based on family dates. I completely forgot about it until I saw the drawing results. I paused, watching their faces. I won $5 million. The silence that followed lasted exactly 7 seconds. I counted them. Then my mother's face lit up with pure joy. "Oh my goodness, Anissa, Robert, did you hear that our daughter won the lottery?" My father stood up so quickly his chair scraped against the floor. $5 million. Are you absolutely certain? Did you check the numbers multiple times? I verified it with the Lottery Commission. It's real. For about 90 seconds, everything was perfect. My mother hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe, while my father kept shaking his head in amazement. They asked questions about taxes, about when I'd claim the prize, about how I was feeling. It felt like the family moment I'd dreamed of. Then Tyler appeared in the doorway, drawn by the excited voices. His hair was messy from sleep, and he wore the same clothes from the day before. The moment he heard about my lottery win, his entire demeanor changed. The sleepy confusion disappeared, replaced by something calculating and intense. "Wait, back up. Anissa won $5 million. He moved into the kitchen like a predator sensing opportunity. "Isn't it wonderful?" my mother gushed. "Our daughter is a millionaire." Tyler's response chilled me to the bone. Instead of congratulations or excitement, he immediately started talking about what this meant for him. "This is perfect timing. You know, I've been dealing with some financial pressure lately. This could solve everything." The room's energy shifted dramatically. My parents exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret, and suddenly their celebration felt forced. "Tyler," my father said carefully, "this is Anissa's win. She's the one who bought the ticket." "Yeah, but we're family," Tyler replied, as if that settled everything. "Family shares with family right, especially when one person has more than they could ever need." I felt my stomach drop. "Tyler, this isn't about what I need or don't need. I won this money." "Come on, Anissa, don't be selfish. You know I'm in a really tough spot right now. Some bad people are looking for money I owe them." "What kind of bad people?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Tyler looked at our parents again, and this time I caught the look they exchanged. It was loaded with meaning, with shared knowledge I wasn't part of. "Tyler has gotten involved with some unsavory individuals," my mother said delicately. "People who make loans with very high interest rates." "Loan sharks," my father clarified bluntly. "He owes them $50,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. $50,000. More than I made in a year at my job. More than my parents had in their savings account. "How did you accumulate $50,000 in debt to loan sharks?" I asked Tyler directly. He shifted uncomfortably. "It started small. Just a few bad bets, sports betting. I thought I could win it back quickly, but things got complicated." "Define complicated." "The people I borrowed from aren't the patient type. They've made it clear that if I don't pay soon, there will be consequences. Not just for me, but for the whole family." My mother's face went pale. "They've called here twice asking about Tyler. They know where we live, where we work." The pieces began falling into place with horrible clarity. "How long has this been going on?" 6 months, my father admitted. "We've been trying to help Tyler handle it quietly, but the amount keeps growing with interest and penalties." "We've already given him everything we can," my mother added. "We liquidated our retirement savings, took cash advances on credit cards, even borrowed against the house." I stared at my parents in shock. "You mortgaged your house to pay Tyler's gambling debts." "We didn't have a choice," my father said defensively. "These people threatened our safety. They know where Tyler grew up, where his family lives." Tyler stepped closer to me, his expression a mixture of desperation and entitlement. "Don't you see, Anissa? Your lottery win isn't just lucky timing. It's fate. This money could save all of us. Save all of you from consequences of Tyler's choices," I corrected. "Don't be like that," my mother pleaded. "We're family. When one of us is in trouble, we all help." "When has Tyler ever helped anyone but himself?" I asked, my voice rising. "When I needed help with college, where was he? When you needed help with medical bills last year, where was he? He only shows up when he needs something." Tyler's mask of charm finally slipped completely. "You've always resented me, haven't you? You're jealous that Mom and Dad love me more, and now you want to use your lottery win to get back at all of us." The accusation was so breathtakingly unfair that I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I felt something cold and determined settle in my chest. This conversation is over. The lottery money is mine. I earned it by buying the ticket with my money. Tyler's problems are Tyler's responsibility. My father's voice turned hard in a way I'd rarely heard. "Anissa, you need to think very carefully about what you're saying. Family loyalty isn't optional." The threat in his tone was unmistakable. This wasn't a request anymore. It was a demand backed by emotional manipulation and family pressure. The twist I never saw coming was what my mother said next, her voice barely above a whisper. "We already told Tyler's creditors that the family would have $5 million to resolve his debts. They're expecting payment within the week." The kitchen fell silent except for the ticking of the antique wall clock that had marked time in our house since I was a child. That familiar sound, which had always been comforting, now felt ominous, like a countdown to something terrible. "What do you mean you told his creditors about my money?" I asked slowly, my voice barely controlled. My mother's hands trembled as she set down her coffee mug. "Tyler was so scared, honey. These men came to our house last Tuesday. They were intimidating. They said Tyler had until Friday to pay or there would be serious consequences. So Tyler told them his sister just won the lottery. My father continued avoiding my eyes. He said the family could cover his debts. It bought us some time. The reality of what they'd done crashed over me like ice water. You used my lottery win as collateral for Tyler's debt without my knowledge or consent. Tyler finally spoke up, and his voice carried none of his usual charm. Look, I had to tell them something. These aren't the kind of people who accept "I don't have the money" as an answer. That's not my problem, I exploded, standing up so quickly my chair fell backward. You don't get to volunteer my money to pay for your mistakes. Sit down and lower your voice, my father commanded in the authoritative tone he'd used when I was a child. We need to discuss this like adults. Adults don't spend other people's money without permission. My mother started crying, which had always been her way of deflecting conflict. Please don't fight. We're family. Families work together to solve problems. No, Mom. Families don't enable one member's destructive behavior at everyone else's expense. Tyler isn't the victim here. He's a 31-year-old man who refuses to take responsibility for his choices. Tyler's face darkened. You know what, Anissa? I'm sick of your holier-than-thou attitude. You've always acted like you're better than me, like you're the perfect daughter while I'm the screw-up. I don't think I'm perfect, but I also don't gamble away money I don't have, then expect my family to bail me out. You want to know the truth? Tyler's voice turned vicious. Mom and Dad have been supporting me because they feel guilty. They know they failed me as parents. They were too strict, too demanding. They pushed me toward rebellion and bad choices. I looked at my parents, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time. They weren't evil people, but they were weak ones. They'd spent years making excuses for Tyler's behavior instead of holding him accountable, and now they were in too deep to change course. My father cleared his throat, his expression grave. Anissa, we've made our decision. You have 24 hours to agree to split your lottery winnings with Tyler, or you're no longer welcome in this house. The words hit me like a physical blow. You're disowning me unless I give Tyler $2.5 million. We're asking you to save your brother's life and protect this family, my mother said through her tears. If you refuse, then you're choosing money over family. The manipulation was so obvious it made me nauseous. They were framing my refusal to enable Tyler's gambling addiction as abandonment and greed. What about Tyler choosing gambling over family? What about him putting all of you in danger with his debts? That's different, my father said dismissively. Tyler made mistakes, but he's learned from them. This is about moving forward. I laughed bitterly. Tyler has been making the same mistakes for 15 years. Every crisis is supposedly the last one. Every bailout is supposedly the final time you'll have to rescue him. Tyler stepped closer, his eyes cold. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. You've always had everything easy. Good grades came naturally. You got scholarships. You landed a stable job. Some of us have to work harder for success. Work harder, Tyler. When was the last time you held a job for more than 6 months? That's not fair. The economy is tough, and employers don't appreciate loyalty anymore. The conversation was becoming circular, with Tyler deflecting responsibility and my parents enabling his excuses. I realized this wasn't really about the money. It was about power and control. They'd discovered leverage over me and intended to use it. My father pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. I've scheduled a meeting with our financial advisor for tomorrow afternoon. He'll help us figure out the best way to transfer your winnings to cover Tyler's debts and set up a trust for his future security. The arrogance was breathtaking. They'd already moved forward with plans for my money as if my consent was merely a formality. I also called the lawyer who handled our mortgage refinancing, my mother added. He said there might be tax implications for large family transfers, but nothing we can't handle. They'd been busy during the week since Tyler told them about my lottery win. While I'd been processing the news and making responsible financial arrangements, they'd been planning how to spend my money. So let me understand this correctly, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. You've already promised Tyler's dangerous creditors that I'll pay his debts. You've scheduled meetings with financial professionals to manage my money. You've researched the legal implications of transferring my winnings, all without asking me. We knew you'd need time to process, my father said. We were just preparing options to make the transition smoother. And if I refuse, the silence stretched for nearly a minute. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice barely audible. Then you're not the daughter we raised. The daughter we raised would put family first. Tyler nodded emphatically. Exactly. This is about who you really are, Anissa. Are you the selfish, greedy person you're acting like right now, or are you the loving sister who cares about her family's safety and future? The emotional manipulation was so thick I could practically taste it. They were rewriting history, making my refusal to enable Tyler's addiction into a character flaw, my desire to keep my own winnings into greed and selfishness. My father checked his watch. You have until noon tomorrow to decide. If you agree to help Tyler, we'll celebrate and move forward as a family. If you refuse, we'll expect you to pack your things and leave. This isn't my house anymore, I pointed out. I moved out 6 years ago. But you're still part of this family, my mother said, until tomorrow at noon. The threat was clear and final. Submit to their demands or lose my family forever. They were betting that I loved them more than I valued my independence and self-respect. They were gambling that I'd cave under pressure, just like I had so many times growing up when faced with their disapproval. What they didn't know was that I'd spent 3 weeks preparing for exactly this moment. I'd researched family lottery disputes, consulted with lawyers about protecting assets, and most importantly, I'd created the perfect insurance policy against their manipulation. The fake lottery ticket in my wallet was about to prove its worth, because if my family wanted to destroy my happiness and steal my winnings, I was going to let them try. And when they did, I'd have all the evidence I needed to show them exactly who they really were. The twist they never anticipated was that their own greed and manipulation would become their downfall. I spent that night in my apartment staring at the ceiling and processing what had just happened. The family I'd grown up with, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, had given me an ultimatum: sacrifice my future for Tyler's mistakes, or lose them forever. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd expected, but it also clarified everything. Around 10 the next morning, Tyler showed up at my door unannounced. I lived in a converted warehouse downtown, one of those trendy loft spaces, with exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows. When I opened the door, Tyler looked genuinely terrible. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unwashed, and his eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion. "Can I come in? We need to talk." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let him enter. He moved slowly through my living space, taking in the modern furniture and artwork I'd carefully selected over the years. Everything in my apartment represented my independence and personal taste, things Tyler had never bothered to notice before. "Nice place," he said, running his fingers along my dining table. "Must be expensive living downtown like this." "I work for it." Tyler turned to face me, and I was shocked by how genuinely desperate he looked. The confident, charming facade he usually wore was completely gone, replaced by raw fear. "Anissa, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about money anymore. These people I owe, they're not going to wait much longer." He pulled out his phone and showed me a series of text messages. The language was crude and threatening, describing in detail what would happen to Tyler if he didn't pay. But worse than that, the messages mentioned our parents by name, listing their home address and work schedules. "They know everything about our family," Tyler continued, his voice shaking. "They know Mom leaves for work at 7:30 every morning. They know Dad's car. They've been watching us." I felt a chill run down my spine, but I forced myself to stay focused. "How did you get involved with people like this?" Tyler collapsed onto my couch, burying his face in his hands. "It started innocently enough, just friendly sports betting with some guys I met at a bar. $5 here, $10 there. Then I had a streak of good luck and started betting bigger amounts." He looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw genuine vulnerability in his expression. "I thought I had a system, Anissa. I was tracking statistics following expert predictions. For a while, I was actually winning consistently. I paid off my credit cards, caught up on my car payments. I felt like I'd finally found something I was good at. What changed? The friendly betting turned into serious business. The casual group became connected to bigger operations. Before I knew it, I was borrowing money to place larger bets, convinced I could win enough to pay everything back and still come out ahead. Tyler's story was depressingly familiar. I'd heard similar accounts from clients at the accounting firm who'd gotten in over their heads with investments or business ventures. The pattern was always the same: early success, leading to overconfidence, bigger risks, inevitable losses, and desperate attempts to recover. The worst part is that I'm good at it, Tyler continued. My win rate is actually above average, but the losses when they come are devastating. I'd win $3,000, then lose $8,000 trying to win back what I'd lost the week before. He stood up and began pacing my living room, his agitation growing. These people don't care about win rates or long-term strategies. They care about money owed, period. When I told them about your lottery win, it bought me time, but it also raised their expectations. Now they think the family has access to millions of dollars. I felt my anger building again. So you made my lottery win their business without asking me. I was desperate. They were talking about sending a message to the family. Do you know what that means? Actually, I didn't want to know. But Tyler's fear seemed genuine, and despite my anger, I felt a flicker of concern for my parents' safety. What exactly did you tell them? I said my sister had won $5 million and that the family would pay my debts within a week. I showed them news articles about the lottery drawing and convinced them I was telling the truth. The implications were worse than I'd realized. Tyler hadn't just mentioned my win, he'd provided proof and made concrete promises about payment. Tyler stopped pacing and looked directly at me. Anissa, I know I've made terrible choices. I know I've disappointed everyone, especially Mom and Dad, but I can't change what's already happened. All I can do is try to fix it and move forward. By taking my money. By accepting help from family when I desperately need it. Look, I've been thinking about this all night. I don't need half of your winnings. Even $1 million would be enough to pay off all my debts and give me a fresh start. I almost laughed at his attempt at negotiation, as if reducing his demand from $2.5 million to $1 million made it reasonable. Tyler, the amount isn't the point. The point is that you're asking me to enable your gambling addiction instead of getting help. I'm not addicted. He snapped, his desperation flaring into anger. I made some bad bets during a rough period in my life. That doesn't make me an addict. You borrowed $50,000 from dangerous people to gamble with. How is that not addiction? Tyler's expression darkened. You know what your problem is, Anissa. You've never taken a real risk in your life. You've never put yourself on the line for anything meaningful. You just play it safe, follow the rules, and judge people who dare to dream bigger. The attack was so unfair, it took my breath away. I take risks every day. I moved out on my own, built a career, created an independent life. Those are positive risks. Safe risks, Tyler countered. Calculated, conservative choices that any responsible person would make. I'm talking about real risks, the kind that can change your entire life. Like gambling with money you don't have. Like believing in yourself enough to bet on your own judgment and skills. We were talking in circles with Tyler reframing his gambling problem as entrepreneurial spirit and my criticism as jealousy. I realized this conversation wasn't about finding a solution. It was about Tyler trying to manipulate me into submission through a combination of fear, guilt, and personal attacks. Then Tyler played what he clearly thought was his ace card. There's something else you need to know, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. I told Mom and Dad that if you don't help me, I'm going to kill myself. The words hung in the air like poison. I stared at my brother, trying to process what he'd just said. You threatened suicide to manipulate our parents. I didn't threaten anything. I just explained that I couldn't live with the consequences if these people hurt our family because of my debts. I told them I'd rather be dead than responsible for something happening to them. The manipulation was so calculated and cruel that I felt physically sick. Tyler had weaponized our parents' love for him, using their fear of losing him to pressure me into compliance. That's emotional terrorism, Tyler. That's honesty about how desperate I am. He moved closer to me, his eyes intense and pleading. Anissa, I swear to you, if you help me this one time, I'll never ask for anything again. I'll get professional help for my gambling. I'll find a steady job and stick with it. I'll pay you back every penny over time. I'd heard versions of this speech dozens of times over the years. Tyler always promised to change after each crisis, and the promises always proved empty. You said the same thing when Mom and Dad bailed you out of credit card debt 2 years ago. You said it when they paid your car loan last year. You said it when they covered your apartment deposit 6 months ago. This time is different. This time the consequences are serious enough to motivate real change. The consequences have always been serious, Tyler. You just never had to face them because Mom and Dad kept rescuing you. Tyler's facade of vulnerability cracked completely, revealing the manipulative person underneath. Fine. You want to play hardball? Here's the reality: if you don't help me and something happens to our parents because of my debts, that's on you. You could have prevented it with money you'll never miss, but you chose your pride over their safety. The threat was clear and vicious. Tyler was making me responsible for potential violence against our parents if I didn't pay his debts. He was twisting his own poor choices into my moral obligation. Get out of my apartment, I said quietly. Anissa, please, just think about what I've said. Get out, now. Tyler hesitated for a moment, then walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back one final time. You know what the saddest part is? I actually looked up to you when we were kids. I thought you were smart and strong and everything I wanted to be. But you're just selfish and cold. After he left, I sat in my living room for a long time, processing everything he'd said. The threats, the manipulation, the guilt trips, the emotional terrorism. Tyler had revealed exactly who he was, and it was worse than I'd imagined. But what disturbed me most was realizing that my parents had known about his suicide threat and still demanded that I pay his debts. They were willing to use their son's supposed suicidal desperation to coerce their daughter into financial compliance. The fake lottery ticket in my wallet suddenly felt like the smartest decision I'd ever made, because Tyler and my parents were about to discover exactly what happened when they tried to manipulate someone who'd prepared for their betrayal. That afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table with both lottery tickets spread out before me. The real one, which had been safely stored in my bank vault, and the fake one I'd created with painstaking detail. Even side by side, the differences were nearly impossible to detect. The paper quality, the printing, the subtle aging I'd applied, everything was perfect. Creating the fake ticket had taken considerable skill and research. During my college years, I'd minored in graphic design alongside my accounting major, learning about typography, color matching, and printing techniques. What started as a creative outlet had become the tool that would save me from my family's manipulation. I'd spent hours studying authentic lottery tickets, measuring fonts, analyzing paper textures, and perfecting the color saturation. The hardest part was aging the fake ticket to match the wear pattern of the real one. I'd use tea staining, careful folding, and strategic placement in my wallet to create authentic-looking creases and discoloration. My laptop displayed dozens of research tabs about lottery scams, family financial disputes, and legal protections for winners. I'd learned that lottery ticket theft was more common than most people realized, especially within families. Winners were often pressured, threatened, or manipulated by relatives who felt entitled to share the winnings. Armed with this knowledge, I developed a comprehensive protection strategy. The real ticket was secured in a safety deposit box with video surveillance and multiple authentication requirements. I documented every step of the process, photographed the real ticket from multiple angles, and even had it professionally verified by the Lottery Commission. But the fake ticket was my masterpiece of psychological warfare. It looked absolutely authentic, but was completely worthless. Anyone who tried to cash it would immediately discover it was fraudulent. but until that moment, it would seem like the genuine article. My phone rang, interrupting my planning. It was my mother. "Hi, honey, how are you holding up after this morning?" Her voice carried false warmth, the tone she used when trying to manage family conflicts. I could hear the strain underneath her cheerful facade. "I'm fine, Mom, just thinking about everything Tyler told me." He really is desperate, Anissa. I've never seen him so frightened. When he talks about those people he owes money to, he just shakes. "Did he mention his suicide threat to you?" There was a long pause. "He's not thinking clearly right now. The stress has him saying things he doesn't really mean. But you're willing to use his supposed mental health crisis to pressure me into paying his debts. That's not fair. We're trying to save our family from a terrible situation." I could hear my father talking in the background, though I couldn't make out the words. My mother's responses were muffled as she covered the phone. "Your father wants to know if you've made a decision about tomorrow. Tell Dad I'm still considering my options." "Anissa, please don't drag this out. The longer we wait, the more dangerous things become for everyone." "I understand the timeline, Mom." After ending the call, I realized my parents were applying steady pressure to prevent me from thinking clearly or seeking outside advice. They wanted a quick decision made under emotional duress, not a thoughtful response based on careful consideration. That evening, I made several important phone calls. First, I contacted the lawyer I'd been working with to set up my lottery winner protections. I explained the situation with my family and asked about my legal options. "Unfortunately, family coercion around lottery winnings is common," she told me. "The good news is that you've taken excellent precautionary steps. The ticket is secure, and you have clear documentation of ownership. No one can access your winnings without your explicit consent." "What if they try to steal or destroy what they think is my ticket?" "That would be destruction of property, at minimum possibly theft, depending on their intentions. If you're concerned about that possibility, I'd suggest documenting any threats or suspicious behavior." My second call was to Dr. Rachel Morrison, a therapist who specialized in family dynamics and financial stress. I'd found her through my research on lottery winner psychology. "What you're describing sounds like financial abuse," she explained. "Your family is using emotional manipulation, threats, and ultimatums to control your behavior and access your money. That's a form of domestic abuse even between adult family members." They keep saying it's about family loyalty and helping Tyler. Abusers always frame their behavior as necessary or justified, but healthy families don't threaten disownment to force financial compliance. They don't use one member's crisis to exploit another member's success. Dr. Morrison's words validated what I'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. This wasn't about family loyalty. It was about power and control. My final call was to my best friend Sarah, who lived across the country but had remained close despite the distance. We'd met in college and had supported each other through every major life challenge since then. "Wait, back up," Sarah said after I'd explained the situation. "Your parents are threatening to disown you unless you give Tyler millions of dollars for his gambling debts." That's the simplified version, but yes. "Anissa, that's insane. That's not how normal families handle problems." I know that intellectually, but when you're in the middle of it all, the emotional manipulation makes you question yourself. What does your gut tell you to do? Fight back. Show them consequences for trying to manipulate and threaten me. Then trust your instincts. You've always been the strong one in your family. Don't let them break you down now. After those conversations, I felt confident about my decision. My family wanted to play emotional warfare. I was prepared to show them what happened when they underestimated their target. I spent the rest of the evening preparing my apartment for what was coming. I charged my phone and tested the video recording function. I reviewed my financial documents and legal protections. Most importantly, I practiced my reaction for when they tried to destroy what they thought was my lottery ticket. The fake ticket went back into my wallet, positioned exactly where Tyler had seen me keep it during his visit. If my family wanted to steal my winnings, they'd have to reveal their true character by attempting theft and destruction of property. What they didn't realize was that their greed and desperation would provide me with all the evidence I needed to justify cutting them out of my life permanently. The fake ticket wasn't just protection, it was a trap that would expose their moral bankruptcy once and for all. The twist they never anticipated was that their victim had spent weeks preparing for their betrayal. I barely slept that night knowing what was coming. Every sound in my building made me alert. Every creak of the old warehouse structure had me checking my phone for the time. Around 3 a.m, I gave up on sleep entirely and sat in my living room with a cup of coffee watching the city lights through my floor-to-ceiling windows. My phone had been recording audio since midnight, tucked discreetly in my jacket pocket. I'd also positioned a small camera on my bookshelf, disguised among picture frames and decorative objects. If my family decided to take drastic action, I wanted documentation of every second. At 6:30 in the morning, my doorbell rang. I wasn't surprised to see both my parents standing in the hallway looking grim and determined. My father carried a set of my old house keys that I'd forgotten they still had, while my mother clutched her purse tightly against her chest. "We need to talk," my father said without preamble. I stepped aside to let them in, noticing how they both scanned my apartment as if seeing it for the first time. They moved with purpose, not the casual familiarity of previous visits. "It's early for a social call," I observed. "We couldn't sleep," my mother replied. "This situation with Tyler has all of us on edge." My father positioned himself near the kitchen while my mother stayed closer to the living room. I realized they were unconsciously blocking potential exit routes, treating this more like a confrontation than a conversation. "Have you made your decision about helping Tyler?" my father asked. "I've been thinking about it all night." "And?" I let the pause stretch uncomfortably long before responding. I need more information before I can commit to anything. Tyler's story has holes in it, and I want to understand exactly what I'd be getting involved in. My parents exchanged a look of frustration. They'd clearly hoped for immediate compliance. "What kind of information?" my mother asked. "I want to meet these creditors Tyler owes money to. I want to see documentation of his debts. I want a written agreement about repayment terms and guarantees that this will be the final bailout." My father's jaw tightened. "Anissa, you're overthinking this. Sometimes family situations require trust and quick action, not business negotiations. When the family situation involves millions of dollars and dangerous criminals, I think due diligence is appropriate." "You sound like you're already planning to refuse," my mother said, her voice taking on a wounded tone. "I sound like someone who wants to understand what she's agreeing to before making irreversible financial commitments." The tension in the room was becoming palpable. My parents hadn't expected resistance or questions. They'd expected emotional capitulation to family pressure. "Where's your lottery ticket?" my father asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard with its directness. "Why?" "We want to see it. After everything Tyler told us, we want to verify that you actually won what you claim you won." I felt a chill run down my spine. My parents were questioning the authenticity of my lottery win as if I might have fabricated the entire story. "You think I'm lying about winning $5 million? We think you might be exaggerating," my mother said carefully. "Maybe you won a smaller amount and you're using Tyler's crisis as an excuse to avoid sharing." The accusation was breathtaking in its audacity. They were suggesting I'd invented or inflated my lottery win to justify refusing to help Tyler. "The ticket is in my wallet," I said, gesturing toward the kitchen counter where I'd deliberately placed my purse. Both parents looked toward my purse with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I could practically see them calculating whether they could grab it before I could stop them. "Could we take a look at it?" my father asked, moving closer to the counter. "Why?" "Because we want to help you plan the best way to claim your winnings and manage the tax implications. We've done research on lottery procedures." The lie was smooth but obvious. They didn't want to help me plan anything. They wanted to verify the ticket's existence and location. I walked to the counter and retrieved my wallet very deliberately, removing the fake lottery ticket and setting it on the granite surface. Both parents immediately moved closer, examining the numbers and checking them against information on my father's phone. "It's real," my mother whispered, and I could hear genuine awe in her voice. For several minutes, they studied the fake ticket with fascination, discussing the numbers, the dates, the incredible odds. Their excitement was genuine, which made what I knew was coming even more disturbing. "This changes everything," my father said. "Tyler's problems are financial stress, your future security. Everything can be solved with this little piece of paper." "This little piece of paper that belongs to me," I corrected. The reminder seemed to snap them back to their mission. My mother's expression hardened while my father stepped closer, his body language becoming more aggressive. "Anissa, we've been patient with you, but time is running out. Tyler's creditors expect payment today. We need your decision right now." "My decision is that I need more time to think." "Time we don't have," my father replied sharply. I picked up the fake ticket and returned it to my wallet, then walked toward my bedroom. "I'm going to get dressed. We can continue this conversation later." "Wait," my mother called after me. "Don't just walk away from this." But I continued into my bedroom and closed the door behind me. Through the thin walls of my converted loft, I could hear my parents talking in urgent, hushed tones. I couldn't make out specific words, but their tone was clearly conspiratorial. I got dressed slowly, taking extra time to brush my teeth and fix my hair. I wanted to give my parents plenty of opportunity to reveal their true intentions. When I emerged from the bedroom 20 minutes later, both parents were still in my living room, but their positions had changed. My mother was sitting on my couch while my father stood near the kitchen counter, where I'd left my purse. "Feel better?" my mother asked with forced cheerfulness. "Much, thank you for waiting." We talked for another hour about family loyalty, Tyler's situation, and their expectations for my lottery winnings. The conversation was circular and increasingly tense, with my parents growing more frustrated by my refusal to commit immediately. Finally, they announced they needed to leave. "We're going to check on Tyler," my mother explained. "He's been so anxious about today. Tell him I'm still considering everything." After they left, I waited 30 minutes, then checked my apartment carefully. Nothing seemed disturbed, but I noticed my purse had been moved slightly on the counter. The change was subtle, just a few inches, but I'd positioned it deliberately and knew exactly where it had been. They'd gone through my purse while I was getting dressed. They'd confirmed the location of what they thought was my lottery ticket. I spent the rest of the day running errands and staying away from my apartment. I wanted my parents to believe I was going about my normal routine, unaware of their planning. In reality, I was giving them time to finalize whatever scheme they were developing. That evening, Tyler called me. "How did the conversation with Mom and Dad go this morning?" "They're very concerned about your situation." "Did you tell them you'd help me?" "I told them I needed more time to think." Tyler's frustration was obvious even over the phone. "Anissa, I don't have more time. These people are expecting payment tonight. If I don't deliver, they're going to assume I was lying about having access to the money. Maybe you should have thought about that before you told them about my lottery win without my permission." "Damn it, Anissa, this isn't a game. People could get hurt." "Then maybe you should turn yourself into the police and ask for protection from your creditors." Tyler hung up on me without responding. An hour later, my mother called. "Tyler is having a complete breakdown. He's talking about hurting himself if this situation doesn't get resolved. Then you should call a mental health crisis line and get him professional help. Or his sister could help him by sharing her lottery winnings." The emotional manipulation was relentless, but I'd prepared for it. "Mom, if Tyler is genuinely suicidal, that's a medical emergency that requires professional intervention, not money." After I hung up, I turned off my apartment lights and positioned myself near the window where I could watch the building entrance. If my family was planning something desperate, it would probably happen tonight. I didn't have to wait long. At 11:30, I saw my father's car pull up outside my building. 2 figures got out and used a key to enter through the main door. My parents were coming back, and they weren't here for another conversation. They were here to steal what they thought was my lottery ticket. The fake ticket I'd created was about to serve its ultimate purpose. I woke up at dawn after only a few hours of restless sleep. My apartment felt different somehow, charged with the tension of impending confrontation. I could feel in my bones that today was the day my family would reveal their true character. My phone showed several missed calls from Tyler and my parents, along with increasingly desperate text messages. Tyler's final message, sent at 2 a.m, simply said, "Last chance to save your family." I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, positioning my phone to record audio and adjusting the hidden camera angle for optimal coverage. The fake lottery ticket went into my purse exactly where my parents had seen it yesterday. Everything was ready. At exactly 8 o'clock, my doorbell rang insistently. When I opened the door, all 3 of them stood there, my parents flanking Tyler, who looked like he'd been awake all night. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes disheveled, and his hands shook slightly as he gripped a crumpled piece of paper. "We need to come in," my father said, pushing past me without waiting for permission. The energy they brought into my space was aggressive and desperate. Tyler immediately began pacing while my parents positioned themselves strategically around my living room. "Show her the note," my mother urged Tyler. Tyler unfolded the paper he'd been clutching and held it out to me. The handwriting was crude, threatening, and explicit about what would happen if payment wasn't received by noon today. "They slipped this under my apartment door sometime last night," Tyler said, his voice shaking. "They're done waiting." The note was genuinely frightening, describing violence in graphic detail and mentioning specific locations where my family could be found. Whether Tyler had written it himself or received it from actual criminals, the threat felt real. "Tyler, you need to take this to the police immediately." "The police can't protect us from these people," my father interrupted. "The only solution is to pay the debt and make this go away." "Using my lottery winnings." "Using family money to solve a family problem," my mother corrected. I looked at each of them carefully, seeing the desperation, the determination, and underneath it all the sense of entitlement that had brought us to this moment. "I've made my decision," I announced. The room went completely silent. Tyler stopped pacing. My parents leaned forward expectantly. "I'm not giving Tyler any money for his gambling debts." The explosion of angry voices was immediate and overwhelming. Tyler screamed about betrayal and family loyalty, while my parents talked over each other about disappointment and selfishness. The accusations flew fast and furious. I was greedy, ungrateful, cold-hearted, jealous. "After everything we've done for you," my mother said, her voice breaking with emotion. "After all the love and support and sacrifice." "What sacrifice?" I asked. "When did you ever sacrifice anything for me that you didn't also give to Tyler?" "We raised you, fed you, clothed you, sent you to college," my father listed angrily. "You did the same for Tyler, plus bailed him out of debt repeatedly as an adult. Because Tyler needed more help. You were always self-sufficient." The admission hung in the air like poison. I was expected to be endlessly capable and independent, while Tyler was allowed to be perpetually needy and dependent. Tyler stepped closer to me, his face twisted with rage. "You know what? I'm glad this is happening. I'm glad you're showing everyone who you really are. You're not my sister anymore. If being your sister means enabling your addiction and paying for your mistakes, then you're right. I'm not your sister." "Fine," Tyler shouted. "Then you don't get to have a family anymore." He spun around and grabbed my purse from the kitchen counter before I could react. My parents immediately moved to block my path as Tyler dumped the contents onto my coffee table. "Tyler, what are you doing?" I demanded, putting genuine panic in my voice. "What I should have done days ago," he replied, finding the fake lottery ticket among my scattered belongings. He held it up triumphantly, waving it in the air. "You want to keep this money from your family? Fine. But you're not keeping it at all." "Tyler, stop, please." My performance was Oscar-worthy. I lunged toward him desperately while my parents held me back. The terror and desperation in my voice sounded completely authentic. "No!" I screamed as Tyler began tearing the fake ticket into pieces. "You're destroying my entire future. You destroyed our family first. Tyler replied coldly, continuing to rip the worthless paper into smaller and smaller pieces. My parents watched with grim satisfaction as Tyler methodically destroyed what they thought was my $5 million lottery ticket. They believed they were teaching me a lesson about family loyalty and the consequences of greed. "There," Tyler said finally, letting the torn pieces fall to the floor like confetti. "Now nobody gets the money. Are you happy?" I stared at the scattered pieces of paper, then slowly began to laugh. It started as a small chuckle, but grew into full, uncontrollable laughter that filled my entire apartment. "What's wrong with you?" my mother asked, alarmed by my reaction. I kept laughing, doubling over with the sheer joy and relief of watching their plan backfire so spectacularly. "Anissa, stop it," my father commanded. "This isn't funny." "Oh, but it is," I gasped between laughs. "It's absolutely hilarious." Tyler looked at me with growing confusion and anger. "You're having some kind of breakdown." "No, Tyler, I'm having some kind of breakthrough." I walked to where the torn pieces lay scattered on my hardwood floor and nudged them with my foot. "You three just spent 10 minutes destroying a worthless piece of paper while congratulating yourselves on teaching me a lesson about greed and family loyalty." "What are you talking about?" my mother whispered. "That wasn't my real lottery ticket, you idiots. That was a fake I created specifically for this moment." The silence that followed was absolutely deafening. All three of them stared at me in shock, their minds struggling to process what I'd just revealed. "That's impossible," Tyler said weakly. I pulled out my phone and showed them photos I'd taken of the real lottery ticket weeks ago, along with documentation from the bank where it was safely stored. "The real ticket has been in a safety deposit vault since the day after I won. What you just destroyed was an expertly crafted replica I made specifically to test your character." My father's face turned white. You planned this." "I planned for the possibility that my own family might try to steal from me. Turns out my paranoia was completely justified." Tyler looked at the torn paper scattered around his feet, then back at me. "So the real ticket is perfectly safe along with my $5 million that you'll never see a penny of." My mother sank onto my couch, the full implications hitting her. We tried to destroy your lottery ticket." "You succeeded in destroying a lottery ticket, just not the one that mattered." The psychological impact was devastating. They'd revealed their true character, committed what they thought was a serious crime, and accomplished absolutely nothing except exposing themselves as thieves and manipulators. Tyler's legs gave out and he collapsed into my dining chair. "I don't understand. Why would you do this to us?" "I didn't do anything to you, Tyler. I created a test, and you all failed it spectacularly." The fake ticket had served its purpose perfectly. My family had revealed exactly who they were when they thought they could get away with it, and now I had all the evidence I needed to justify what came next. The silence in my apartment stretched for nearly 5 minutes. My parents and Tyler sat in stunned disbelief, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. They'd attempted to destroy what they thought was my $5 million lottery ticket, and instead had exposed themselves as would-be thieves while accomplishing nothing. I calmly walked to my kitchen and returned with a small dustpan and brush, methodically sweeping up the pieces of the fake ticket, while they watched in horrified fascination. 27 hours. I said conversationally as I worked. That's how long it took for my own family to attempt theft and destruction of property when they didn't get their way. "Anissa," my mother began weakly, You thought you could steal my lottery winnings and destroy my financial future to enable Tyler's gambling addiction. Yes, I understand what you thought." Tyler finally found his voice. "This was a trap. You set us up. I prepared for the possibility that you might reveal your true character under pressure. You chose to walk into the trap." I dumped the torn pieces of fake ticket into my trash can with deliberate ceremony, then returned to face them with my phone in hand. The interesting thing about modern technology is how easy it is to document everything. For instance, I've been recording audio since you arrived this morning. I played back Tyler's voice clearly stating his intention to destroy my lottery ticket, followed by my parents' voices expressing approval and satisfaction as he carried out the act. I've also been recording video. I continued showing them footage from my hidden camera that captured the entire scene in high definition. My father's face went ashen. "You recorded us without permission." "I recorded criminal activity taking place in my own home. The permission requirement varies by state, but given that you were committing felonies, I think any court would find the recording admissible." "Felonies," my mother whispered. I pulled out my laptop and displayed a legal document I'd prepared in advance. Attempted theft conspiracy to commit theft, destruction of property, and intimidation. Those are the charges my lawyer believes would stick based on the evidence I've gathered. The document was prepared by my attorney as a precautionary measure. We discussed the legal implications of family coercion around lottery winnings, and she'd outlined exactly what crimes my family would be committing if they followed through on their threats. "You can't be serious," Tyler said. "We're family." Family members who commit crimes against each other are still criminals. Being related doesn't provide legal immunity for theft. I walked to my bookshelf and retrieved a folder I'd prepared spreading additional documents across my coffee table. Bank records showing their depletion of savings to enable Tyler's addiction, credit card statements revealing cash advances for gambling debts, screenshots of Tyler's threatening text messages, a detailed timeline of their escalating demands and ultimatums. "I've been documenting this situation for weeks," I explained. "Every conversation, every threat, every manipulation attempt. My lawyer has copies of everything." My parents stared at the evidence of their own behavior spread out before them. Seeing it documented and organized made their actions appear even worse than they'd seemed in real time. "What do you want from us?" my father asked quietly. "I want you to understand the gravity of what you just attempted. You tried to steal millions of dollars from your own daughter to pay for your son's gambling debts. You were willing to destroy my financial security to enable his addiction." Tyler stood up abruptly, his face flushed with anger. "Stop calling it an addiction. I made some bad bets during a difficult period in my life. Tyler, you borrowed $50,000 from criminals to gamble with. You threatened suicide to manipulate our parents. You convinced them to liquidate their retirement savings and mortgage their house. That's not bad luck. That's addiction." "You don't know what you're talking about." I opened another file on my laptop and turned the screen toward them. "Actually, I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've spent the past month researching gambling addiction, family enablement, and financial abuse. I've consulted with therapists who specialize in addiction recovery." The screen displayed articles about gambling addiction signs and symptoms with Tyler's behaviors highlighted in yellow. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. "Tyler exhibits every classic sign of gambling addiction." I continued. "Loss of control, continued gambling despite negative consequences, lying about the extent of gambling activities, borrowing money to gamble, and using gambling to escape from problems." "That's not," Tyler started to protest. "You've lost multiple jobs because you were gambling during work hours. You've borrowed money from family members under false pretenses. You've prioritized gambling over basic necessities like rent and food. You've threatened self-harm when faced with consequences for your gambling." Each point I made was supported by documented evidence, employer termination letters, bank records, family loan agreements, and threatening messages. Tyler's defensive anger crumbled as he realized I'd assembled a comprehensive case file demonstrating his addiction. "How did you get all of this information?" "Most of it came from Mom and Dad during their attempts to convince me to pay your debts. They provided detailed information about your financial history while trying to justify why I should bail you out." My parents looked stricken as they realized their own words had provided evidence against Tyler and themselves. "The rest came from public records and social media. You've been surprisingly open about your gambling activities online, Tyler. Screenshots of your betting discussions, photos from casino visits, posts about big wins and losses. I showed them printouts of Tyler's social media activity over the past 2 years, painting a clear picture of escalating gambling behavior and increasing desperation. Now, here's what's going to happen. I announced, closing the laptop and looking directly at each of them. You have 2 choices. Option 1, I file criminal charges against all 3 of you for attempted theft conspiracy and related crimes. You'll be arrested, prosecuted, and likely convicted based on the evidence I've gathered. The threat was real and immediate. My documentation was thorough enough to ensure successful prosecution. Option 2. You acknowledge that what you attempted today was wrong. Tyler enters a residential gambling addiction treatment program within the week, and you all participate in family therapy to address the toxic dynamics that led to this situation. And if we choose option 2, my mother asked, I don't file criminal charges, but you also don't get a penny of my lottery winnings. Tyler's debts remain his responsibility, not the family's. Tyler jumped to his feet. Those people are going to kill me if I don't pay. Then you should contact law enforcement and ask for protection while you work out a payment plan or declare bankruptcy. Your gambling debts are not a family emergency. They're a personal consequence of your choices. The room fell silent again as they processed their limited options. They'd expected to manipulate me into compliance, but instead had trapped themselves into accepting accountability or facing criminal prosecution. The fake lottery ticket had accomplished everything I'd hoped for. It had revealed their true character, provided evidence of their criminal intentions, and given me the leverage to demand real change instead of continued enablement. For the first time in my adult life, I held all the power in family dynamics, and I intended to use that power to either save my family or save myself from them. 20 minutes after I'd presented my family with their ultimatum, the doorbell rang with urgent, aggressive buzzing that made everyone in the room freeze. Through my apartment's intercom system, a gruff voice demanded to speak with Tyler Sullivan immediately. Tyler, you expecting someone? I asked, though I could see from his terrified expression that he knew exactly who was at my door. Don't answer it, he whispered, his face draining of color. Tyler Sullivan. The voice crackled through the intercom again. We know you're in there. Your parents told us this address when we visited their house this morning. My parents looked stricken. My father tried to speak, but only managed a strangled whisper. We thought they were just checking on Tyler's progress with the money. The intercom buzzed again, longer and more insistently. Mr. Sullivan, this is Jake Reeves. My associate Frankie and I need to discuss your payment schedule. We've been very patient, but our patience has limits. Tyler was visibly shaking now, pressed against my living room wall as if trying to disappear through it. The confident manipulator who'd destroyed my fake lottery ticket had been replaced by a cowering man terrified of the consequences of his choices. Anissa. My mother pleaded, Please don't let them in. They're not going away, I replied, moving toward the intercom, and I want to understand exactly what Tyler has gotten all of you involved in. No, Tyler hissed. You don't know these people. They're dangerous. Then maybe you shouldn't have borrowed money from them. I pressed the intercom button. This is Anissa Tyler's sister. Come up to apartment 4B. The look of absolute betrayal on Tyler's face was almost satisfying. He'd spent days trying to manipulate me with fear about these dangerous people, and now I was inviting them into my home to have an honest conversation. Within minutes, heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside my apartment. When I opened the door, 2 men stood there looking exactly like Central Casting's version of intimidating debt collectors. Jake Reeves was in his 40s, built like a former boxer, wearing a leather jacket despite the warm weather. His associate Frankie was younger but larger, with the kind of neck tattoos that suggested extensive familiarity with the criminal justice system. You must be the lottery winner, Jake said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Your brother's been telling everyone about your good fortune. Please come in. We need to clear up some confusion about Tyler's debts. Both men entered my apartment with the casual confidence of people accustomed to intimidating others. They took in my modern furnishings and expensive electronics with obvious appreciation. "Nice place," Frankie commented. "Lottery money goes pretty far, huh?" "Actually, I earned this through my job. The lottery win is separate." Jake's attention focused immediately on my parents and Tyler, who were huddled together near my kitchen like frightened animals. "Tyler, buddy. There you are. We were starting to worry about you." The false friendliness in Jake's voice was more menacing than outright threats would have been. "We stopped by your parents' house this morning to check on your progress with our payment arrangement. They seem very confident that today would be resolution day." My father cleared his throat nervously. "We explained that there were some complications with accessing the lottery funds." "Complications?" Frankie repeated, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "What kind of complications?" I stepped forward before my family could respond. "The complication is that Tyler lied to you. I never agreed to pay his gambling debts with my lottery winnings." Both men turned their attention to me with predatory focus. I could feel the threat radiating from them, but I'd prepared for this moment psychologically and legally. "So Tyler made promises he couldn't keep?" Jake asked. "Tyler made promises using money that doesn't belong to him, and never did." Jake nodded slowly as if processing this information. Then he turned back to Tyler with an expression that made my brother shrink further into the wall. "Tyler, Tyler, Tyler. You told us your sister was a team player. You said family loyalty meant everyone would contribute to solving your little problem." "She is family," Tyler stammered. "She's just being stubborn about the money." "Stubborn?" Frankie laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Or smart. Maybe she knows something about your situation that you haven't shared with us." The two men moved closer to Tyler, and I could see him beginning to panic. "What do you mean?" Tyler asked. Jake pulled out a tablet and began scrolling through information. "See, after our conversation last week, we did some research on your background. Very interesting reading." He turned the tablet screen toward my family, displaying what appeared to be financial records and background check results. "Turns out Tyler here isn't just a recreational gambler with bad luck. He's been running a little side business we weren't aware of." The room went completely silent. Tyler's face turned ashen while my parents looked confused. "What kind of side business?" I asked. Frankie took over the explanation with obvious relish. "Your brother has been taking bets from other people, then using our operation to place those bets. When he wins, he keeps a percentage and pays out his customers. When he loses, he keeps the customers' money and tells them the bets are still pending," Jake finished. "Pretty clever system, except he got greedy and started keeping money from winners, too." The implications hit me like a freight train. Tyler wasn't just a gambling addict. He was running a betting scam, using other people's money. "How much money are we talking about?" I asked. Jake consulted his tablet again. "According to our investigation, Tyler has collected approximately $200,000 from various customers over the past 8 months. The $50,000 he owes us is just what he's lost of his own money." My parents stared at Tyler in horror as the full scope of his criminal activity became clear. "Tyler," my mother whispered, "is this true?" Tyler's response was barely audible. "It wasn't supposed to work like this. I was going to pay everyone back when I hit a big win." "But you never hit a big win," Frankie observed. "You just kept losing and digging the hole deeper." Jake put away his tablet and addressed my family directly. "So here's our problem. Tyler owes us $50,000 in gambling debts, but he also owes his customers approximately $150,000 in fraudulent betting schemes. Some of those customers are becoming impatient." "What does that mean?" my father asked. "It means other people are looking for Tyler people who make us look like choir boys. And when they find him, they're not going to be interested in payment plans or family negotiations." The criminal web Tyler had created was far more complex and dangerous than any of us had realized. He wasn't just an addicted gambler. He was a con artist who defrauded multiple people while using his family as unwitting accomplices. "So when Tyler told us about his sister's lottery win," Jake continued, "we figured that was perfect timing. $5 million would cover his debts to us, his debts to his customers, and provide a nice bonus for our trouble and investigation time." But now we learn that sister isn't willing to cooperate, Frankie added with false sadness. The threat was becoming explicit. They weren't just here to collect Tyler's debt. They were here to collect what they felt was owed from his entire betting scam operation. I understand your frustration, I told them calmly, but Tyler's criminal activity is his responsibility, not his family's. Jake smiled that cold smile again. See, that's where you're wrong. Tyler made this a family problem when he used your lottery win as collateral for his promises. He made it our business when he gave us this address and your names as references for his creditworthiness. The trap Tyler had created for my family was even worse than I'd imagined. His lies and manipulations had made all of us targets for multiple groups of dangerous criminals. But what neither Tyler nor his creditors had anticipated was that I'd been preparing for exactly this scenario. The fake lottery ticket had been just the beginning of my comprehensive protection strategy. As Jake and Frankie's revelations about Tyler's criminal operations sank in the atmosphere, and my apartment became suffocating. My parents looked like they'd aged 10 years in the past hour while Tyler appeared on the verge of complete collapse. I need to understand something, I said to Jake, maintaining my composure despite the growing tension. You're saying Tyler isn't just a gambler with bad luck, but someone running a fraudulent betting operation. Jake nodded, pulling out his tablet again. Tyler would approach people, coworkers, neighbors, friends from bars, and offer to place sports bets for them through what he claimed were professional connections, with better odds than regular bookies. He'd collect money from multiple people for the same game, Frankie continued. If the bets won, he'd pay out some customers, but not others, claiming their bets were still processing. If the bets lost, he'd tell everyone the bets were still pending while he used their money for his own gambling. The sophistication of Tyler's scam was stunning. He'd essentially created a Ponzi scheme using sports betting as cover. How many people are we talking about? I asked. At least 30 customers over 8 months, Jake replied. Small amounts individually, 2,000 here, 5,000 there, but it adds up quickly. My mother made a small, wounded sound. Tyler, how could you do this to innocent people? Tyler's response was defensive and pathetic. I was going to pay everyone back. I just needed one big win to make everything right. With whose money? I demanded. You'd already spent your customers' money on your own gambling. I was using credit advances and loans to keep the system running until I could hit a jackpot. The delusion was complete. Tyler had convinced himself that stealing from dozens of people was justified because he intended to pay them back with hypothetical future winnings. Jake looked at his watch with obvious impatience. This family therapy session is touching, but we have business to conclude. Tyler owes us $50,000 plus interest and investigation fees. His customers collectively are owed about $150,000 in fraudulent bets. Total debt, approximately $220,000. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. And you expect me to pay that with my lottery winnings, I stated. Tyler made commitments on behalf of his family, Frankie replied. We're just here to see those commitments honored. Those commitments were made without my knowledge or consent. Jake's expression hardened. Lady, I don't care about your family's internal politics. Tyler used your lottery win as security for his debts. That makes you a party to this arrangement whether you like it or not. The legal absurdity of their position would have been laughable if not for the very real threat they represented. That's not how contracts work, I replied calmly. Tyler can't use assets he doesn't own as collateral. Maybe not legally, Jake admitted, but we're not operating in the legal system here. We're operating in the real world where people who don't honor their commitments face consequences. My father finally found his voice. What kind of consequences? Instead of answering directly, Frankie pulled out his phone and showed my father a series of photographs. I couldn't see the images clearly, but my father's reaction told me everything I needed to know. Jesus Christ, my father whispered, his face going white. Those are examples of what happens to people who run betting scams and don't make restitution, Jake explained conversationally. We don't like being used as unwitting participants in fraud operations. Tyler slumped against the wall, apparently realizing for the first time that his con game had made him a target for people far more dangerous than ordinary loan sharks. But here's the good news, Jake continued with false cheerfulness. Tyler's sister won $5 million. Even after taxes, that's enough to cover all debts with money left over for everyone to walk away happy. Except I'm not paying Tyler's debts, I stated firmly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Both men focused their attention on me with the kind of intensity that suggested they weren't accustomed to hearing the word no. Ms. Sullivan, Jake said slowly, I think you might be misunderstanding the seriousness of this situation. I understand it perfectly. Tyler committed fraud against multiple people while accumulating gambling debts he can't pay. Those are his problems, not mine. Frankie stepped closer and I could smell cigarettes and cheap cologne. Those problems become family problems when Tyler made promises using family assets. Tyler doesn't have access to my assets. He never did. But he told us he did. He told his victims he did. That means a lot of dangerous people think your family has money that should be used to make them whole. The implicit threat was clear whether or not I actually owed anything. I'd been marked as a target by multiple criminal groups who believed Tyler's lies about family money. My mother started crying again, but this time her tears seemed genuine rather than manipulative. Anissa, please, we're all in danger because of Tyler's choices. Can't you just pay these men so we can be safe? The request was heartbreaking because it came from real fear rather than greed. My mother had finally realized that Tyler's actions had put the entire family at risk. Mom, if I pay Tyler's debts, it doesn't solve the underlying problem. It just teaches him that his family will always bail him out of the consequences of his choices. But it would solve the immediate problem, my father added desperately. We could all be safe, and then Tyler could get help for his addiction. I looked at my family, truly looked at them, and saw people who'd been systematically destroyed by Tyler's manipulation and lies. They weren't evil. They were victims of his sociopathic behavior. There's something you all need to understand about Tyler's situation, I said quietly. This isn't his first criminal enterprise. Tyler's head snapped up. What are you talking about? I walked to my laptop and pulled up additional research I'd conducted over the past weeks. Tyler, you've been running variations of this scam for years. Remember the investment opportunity you pitched to Uncle Mike 2 years ago? The business partnership with your former boss, the cryptocurrency venture you convinced 3 neighbors to invest in. Each reference made Tyler's face grow paler. My parents looked confused, but I could see recognition dawning in their expressions. Tyler isn't just a gambling addict who got in over his head. He's a serial con artist who uses family connections and gambling addiction as cover for deliberate fraud. Jake and Frankie exchanged a look that suggested they were reassessing Tyler's character in real time. Is that true? Jake asked Tyler directly. Tyler's silence was answer enough. Well, Frankie said thoughtfully, that changes things considerably. We don't just have a gambling addict with poor impulse control. We have a career criminal who's been using his family as unwitting accomplices. The revelation shifted the power dynamic in the room dramatically. Suddenly, Tyler wasn't a victim of addiction who deserved sympathy. He was a calculating predator who'd manipulated everyone around him. And that realization was about to change everything. The moment Jake and Frankie realized Tyler's true nature, I saw an opportunity to take control of the situation. These weren't just criminals. They were businessmen operating outside the law who'd been deceived by Tyler, just like everyone else. Gentlemen, I said calmly, I think we've all been victims of Tyler's manipulation, but I have a proposition that might interest you. Both men turned their attention to me with sharp focus. Tyler looked terrified while my parents watched with confused hope. I've been documenting Tyler's criminal activities for weeks. I continued walking to my laptop. financial records, victim testimonials, evidence of systematic fraud spanning several years. I opened a comprehensive file I'd been building since discovering the scope of Tyler's crimes. Screenshots, bank records, witness statements, legal documentation, everything needed to build an airtight case against him. "This is more than just gambling debts," I explained. "Tyler has been running confidence scams for at least 3 years, possibly longer. He's defrauded family members, friends, neighbors, co-workers, and strangers of approximately $500,000 total." Jake whistled softly as he reviewed the evidence on my screen. "Jesus, Tyler, you've been busy." "The pattern is always the same," I continued. "Tyler identifies vulnerable targets, builds trust through family connections or shared interests, then pitches investment opportunities or betting schemes that don't exist." Frankie leaned over Jake's shoulder, studying the documentation. "This guy's more sophisticated than we thought." "Which brings me to my proposition," I said, closing the laptop and facing them directly. "You have 2 options. Option 1, continue trying to collect money from Tyler's family, knowing that we'll never voluntarily pay debts we didn't incur." "What's option 2?" Jake asked. "Help me ensure Tyler faces appropriate consequences for his crimes, while recovering money for his victims through legal channels." The room went silent. Tyler stared at me in horror, realizing I was essentially offering to turn him over to his creditors in exchange for my family's safety. "Anissa," my mother gasped, "what are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we stop enabling Tyler's criminal behavior and start treating him like the career fraudster he is." I turned back to Jake and Frankie. "Tyler has assets you probably aren't aware of. Hidden bank accounts, cryptocurrency investments, valuable personal property. He's also committed federal crimes that carry significant prison sentences." "Go on," Jake said, his interest clearly piqued. "I'm willing to share all the evidence I've gathered and help you recover whatever money Tyler has hidden in exchange for agreements that leave my family out of future collection efforts." "And what happens to Tyler in this scenario?" Frankie asked. "Tyler faces the consequences of his choices through appropriate legal and financial channels. No family bailouts, no emotional manipulation, no using addiction as an excuse for deliberate fraud." Tyler found his voice. "You can't be serious. I'm your brother. You're a criminal who spent years defrauding innocent people while manipulating our family into enabling your behavior." "I have an addiction. I need help, not punishment." "You have an addiction. And you're a career criminal. Those aren't mutually exclusive conditions." I walked to my safe and removed additional documents I'd prepared for this exact scenario. "Jake, Frankie, here's what I can offer you. Complete financial documentation of Tyler's hidden assets, estimated at approximately $80,000 in recoverable funds. Legal documentation of his fraud schemes that could be used to pursue civil judgments, and cooperation with any legitimate law enforcement investigation." Jake examined the documents with growing interest. "This is impressive research." "I've been preparing for this conversation for weeks. I knew eventually Tyler's crimes would catch up with him, and I wanted to be ready to protect my family while ensuring he faced appropriate consequences." "What do you want in return?" Frankie asked. "Written agreements that Tyler's debts to your organization are Tyler's personal responsibility, not family obligations. No future contact with or threats against family members, and cooperation in pursuing Tyler's hidden assets through legal channels rather than violent ones." The proposal was audacious but logical. I was offering Tyler's creditors a path to recovery that didn't involve criminal intimidation of innocent family members. Jake and Frankie stepped away from the group and had a whispered conference near my kitchen window. Tyler used the break to plead desperately with my parents and me. "You can't do this to me. I'm family. Families protect each other." "Families protect each other from external threats," I replied. "They don't enable internal threats to continue victimizing innocent people. I'll change. I'll get help. I'll pay everyone back." "You've made those promises dozens of times over the years, Tyler. Nobody believes them anymore." My father looked anguished. "Anissa, surely there's a middle ground. Some way to help Tyler without destroying him completely." Dad Tyler destroyed himself through years of deliberate criminal choices. Continuing to bail him out just enables more victims and more crimes. My mother was crying again, but I could see her beginning to understand the logic of my position. Jake and Frankie returned from their conference with serious expressions. "Here's what we're willing to consider," Jake announced. "Full cooperation in recovering Tyler's hidden assets, written documentation of all fraudulent schemes for potential civil litigation, Tyler's agreement to work with us in contacting his victims to arrange legitimate restitution plans. In exchange for," I asked, "no family liability for Tyler's debts to our organization, no future contact with family members, and Tyler gets to deal with his other creditors on his own without family interference or protection." The terms were fair and practical. Tyler would face consequences for his crimes, while my family gained protection from future manipulation and threats. "There's one more condition," Frankie added. "Tyler has to admit publicly that he lied about having access to family money for his debts. We want written confirmation that his promises about lottery winnings were fraudulent." The requirement would destroy Tyler's credibility with all his criminal contacts while confirming that my family had never been willing participants in his schemes. "Tyler," I asked, "do you agree to these terms?" Tyler looked around the room, desperately seeking support from our parents or sympathy from his creditors. He found neither. "I don't have a choice, do I?" "You always have choices, Tyler. You've just finally run out of good ones." The fake lottery ticket had accomplished more than I'd ever imagined. It hadn't just exposed my family's willingness to steal from me, it had created the leverage I needed to finally break Tyler's cycle of criminal behavior and family manipulation. For the first time in years, Tyler would face the real consequences of his choices, without family protection or enablement. And for the first time in years, my family would be free from his destructive influence. The next hour passed in a surreal blur of confessions, document signing, and cold reality setting in. Tyler, faced with no alternatives, began revealing the full scope of his criminal enterprise under Jake and Frankie's increasingly pointed questioning. "Start with the hidden bank accounts," Jake instructed, pulling out a legal pad. Tyler's voice was barely above a whisper. "First National has an account under my middle name. About 12,000 in there. Commerce Bank has one under my old girlfriend's name, but I have access. Maybe 8,000. Each revelation made my parents look sicker. They'd spent years depleting their savings to support Tyler, while he'd been hiding tens of thousands of dollars. "Investment accounts," Frankie prompted. "Cryptocurrency wallet with about 15,000 in Bitcoin. Stock portfolio through an online broker, maybe 20,000 in value. Personal property." Tyler's list was depressingly long, expensive electronics jewelry collectibles. A motorcycle he'd told our parents was repossessed months ago. Items he'd accumulated through fraud while claiming to be financially desperate. "Jesus, Tyler," my father said quietly, "you've been lying about everything." "I was protecting those assets for emergencies," Tyler replied weakly. "Whose emergencies?" I asked. "Because you sure weren't using them for your own supposed crises." While Tyler continued his inventory of hidden wealth, I received a text message that made me smile for the first time all day. My lawyer was outside the building with several federal agents who'd been investigating financial crimes in the area. "Tyler," I announced, "there's something else you should know about my preparations for this conversation." I showed him the text message. "I contacted federal authorities about your betting scam operation 3 days ago. They've been investigating similar schemes throughout the region." The color drained completely from Tyler's face. "You called the FBI on your own brother." "I called law enforcement about a career criminal who was using family connections to victimize innocent people. The fact that the criminal is my brother is irrelevant." Jake and Frankie exchanged glances. Having federal agents involved changed their calculations significantly. "Miss Sullivan," Jake said carefully, "we appreciate your cooperation, but we prefer to handle our business privately." "I understand, but Tyler's crimes extend far beyond your organization. The federal agents want to interview Tyler about mail fraud, wire fraud, and organized financial schemes. Whether you cooperate with them is entirely your choice. The doorbell rang with the distinctive pattern I'd arranged with my lawyer. When I opened the door, attorney Sarah Chen entered with 3 federal agents who looked exactly like what central casting would order for a financial crimes investigation. "Ms. Sullivan," Agent Morrison greeted me. "Thank you for your cooperation with our investigation." Tyler looked around the room desperately, but he was completely trapped. His creditors, his family, and federal law enforcement were all present to witness his downfall. Tyler Sullivan. Agent Martinez asked, approaching my brother, "We'd like to speak with you about fraudulent betting schemes you've been operating in this region." "I want a lawyer," Tyler said immediately. "That's your right," Agent Rodriguez confirmed. "But we have evidence of financial crimes spanning multiple states and involving dozens of victims. Your cooperation now could influence how this investigation proceeds." Jake stepped forward cautiously. "Agents, we're here on a private business matter. We weren't aware of any federal investigation." "Mr. Reeves, we're familiar with your organization's activities. We're not interested in your business practices, as long as they don't involve fraud or violence." The distinction was clear. Legitimate debt collection, even aggressive debt collection, wasn't their concern. Fraud and criminal threats were. "However," Agent Martinez continued, "we are very interested in individuals who use organized criminal contacts to intimidate families of fraud victims." Tyler's face went ashen as he realized the full implications. His use of Jake and Frankie to threaten our family had crossed federal lines regarding organized crime and extortion. "Tyler Sullivan, you're under arrest for wire fraud, mail fraud, and conspiracy to commit extortion." The Miranda rights reading that followed felt like vindication for every year Tyler had manipulated and abused our family's trust. My parents watched in stunned silence as federal agents handcuffed their son. "Anissa," Tyler pleaded as the agents prepared to escort him out, "please don't let this happen. I'm still your brother." "You're a criminal who spent years victimizing innocent people while manipulating our family. Being my brother doesn't exempt you from consequences." "Mom, Dad, do something." My parents looked heartbroken but resigned. Years of enablement and false hope had finally run up against undeniable reality. "We can't protect you from the truth anymore, Tyler," my mother said through tears. After Tyler was taken away, Jake and Frankie prepared to leave as well. "Ms. Sullivan," Jake said, "we appreciate your cooperation in resolving this situation. As agreed, we consider Tyler's debts to be his personal responsibility." "And his victims?" I asked. "The federal agents have procedures for victim restitution. We'll cooperate with any legitimate legal process." Frankie handed me his business card. "If you need any documentation about Tyler's fraudulent promises regarding family money, contact us. We're prepared to testify that he misrepresented his access to your lottery winnings." After everyone left, my apartment felt enormous and quiet. My parents sat on my couch looking older and more fragile than I'd ever seen them. "We're so sorry, Anissa," my mother said quietly. "We had no idea how bad Tyler's problems really were." "We failed as parents," my father added. "We enabled his behavior for years instead of holding him accountable." The admission was painful, but necessary. Tyler's arrest was just the beginning of a long process of accountability and healing for our entire family. "What happens now?" my mother asked. "Now Tyler faces consequences for his choices, while we figure out how to be a healthy family without enabling criminal behavior." I sat down across from them and pulled out one final document from my lawyer. "Tyler will probably serve federal prison time. His victims will have opportunities to recover money through restitution processes. His creditors will pursue his hidden assets through legal channels." "And us," my father asked. "We get family therapy to address the toxic dynamics that allowed Tyler's behavior to continue for so long. We learn to love each other without enabling destructive choices." The fake lottery ticket had accomplished everything I'd hoped for and more. It had exposed Tyler's true character, revealed my family's willingness to enable criminal behavior, and created the documentation needed to ensure he finally faced appropriate consequences. Most importantly, it had freed our family from Tyler's manipulative control for the first time in decades. The real healing could finally begin. 6 weeks after Tyler's arrest, I sat in a family therapy session with my parents, watching them struggle with the reality of what their enabling had created. Dr. Rebecca Santos, a specialist in family trauma and addiction, had been guiding us through the painful process of understanding how our family dynamics had allowed Tyler's criminal behavior to flourish. "Margaret Robert," Dr. Santos said gently, "I want you to think about the moment you first realized Tyler had serious problems that required professional intervention, not family bailouts." My mother twisted her wedding ring nervously. I think it was when Anissa showed us all that evidence. Seeing it laid out like that, all the lies, all the manipulation. I realized we'd been living in denial for years." My father nodded slowly. I kept telling myself that Tyler just needed one more chance, one more fresh start. I convinced myself that family love could fix his problems. "And what do you understand now?" Dr. Santos prompted. "That love without boundaries isn't really love," my father replied. "It's enabling. We were so afraid of losing Tyler that we lost ourselves and nearly lost Anissa, too." The past 6 weeks had been transformative in ways I hadn't expected. Tyler's arrest had initially devastated my parents, but it had also forced them to confront 20 years of denial and poor decisions. Without Tyler's constant crises dominating family conversations, they'd begun to see our relationships clearly for the first time. "Anissa." Dr. Santos turned to me. "How has it felt to watch your parents awakening to these realities?" "Painful, but necessary. I've spent my entire adult life feeling like the outsider in my own family because I refused to enable Tyler's behavior. It's validating to finally have my parents acknowledge that I was right to set boundaries. The breakthrough had come during our 3rd session when my parents finally admitted that their favoritism toward Tyler hadn't been about need or love, but about their own guilt and fear. "We felt responsible for Tyler's problems," my mother had confessed. "He was always more sensitive, more emotional than Anissa. When he struggled, we thought it was because we'd been too hard on him as a child." "So you overcompensated," Dr. Santos had observed. "We gave him money, made excuses, cleaned up his messes, and we expected Anissa to understand because she was stronger and more capable." The realization that they'd punished me for being responsible while rewarding Tyler for being irresponsible had been devastating for them to acknowledge. But the most important development was their genuine commitment to change. They'd enrolled in financial counseling to address the debt they'd accumulated enabling Tyler. They'd joined a support group for families of addicts and criminals. Most significantly, they'd agreed to complete transparency about family finances and decisions. "We want to rebuild our relationship with you based on respect and equality," my father had told me during our last session. "No more expectations that you'll sacrifice your well-being for Tyler's problems." The transformation wasn't just emotional, it was practical. My parents had taken concrete steps to protect themselves from future manipulation. They'd changed their bank accounts, updated their wills, and established clear boundaries about financial assistance for any family member. Tyler, meanwhile, was facing the full consequences of his choices. Federal prosecutors had charged him with 14 counts of wire fraud, mail fraud, and conspiracy. His court-appointed attorney had advised him to accept a plea agreement that would result in 4 to 6 years in federal prison. Tyler called yesterday, my mother mentioned during today's session. He wanted to know if we'd hire a private attorney to fight the charges. "What did you tell him?" Dr. Santos asked. "That he needs to accept responsibility for his choices and work with the public defender. That we won't be funding his legal defense." The decision had been difficult, but healthy. Tyler's arrest had included the discovery of additional victims and hidden assets, making his crimes even more serious than initially believed. He's also asked us to put money in his prison commissary account when he's sentenced, my father added. We told him we'd consider it after he completes addiction treatment and shows genuine remorse to his victims. The conditional support was a massive change from their previous pattern of unconditional enablement. How does it feel to set those boundaries with Tyler? Dr. Santos asked. Scary, my mother admitted, but also right. For the first time, we're treating Tyler like an adult who's responsible for his own choices. The session ended with homework assignments. My parents would continue attending support group meetings, while I would work on forgiveness exercises designed to help me process years of family dysfunction. As we walked to the parking lot together, my father surprised me with an unexpected request. Anissa, would you consider having dinner with us this Sunday? Not because of any crisis or obligation, just because we want to spend time with you. The invitation was simple but profound. For the first time in years, my parents wanted my company for its own sake, not because they needed something from me. I'd like that, I replied honestly. And maybe, my mother added hesitantly, you could tell us about your plans for the lottery money, not because we want anything from it, but because we're genuinely interested in your dreams and goals. The question represented everything that had changed in our relationship. They were asking about my money from curiosity and care, not from greed or entitlement. I'm starting a nonprofit foundation focused on financial literacy and addiction recovery, I told them. I want to help families recognize and address toxic money dynamics before they reach crisis points. That's wonderful, my father said, and I could hear genuine pride in his voice. You're turning your painful experience into something that could help others. The fake lottery ticket had accomplished its purpose, but the real healing was just beginning. My family was learning to love each other without enabling destructive behavior, and I was learning to forgive without forgetting the lessons Tyler's criminality had taught us all. For the first time in years, I felt hopeful about our family's future. 6 months later, I stood in the conference room of the Sullivan Family Foundation, looking out at 30 community members attending our first workshop on financial literacy and family boundaries. The irony wasn't lost on me that my family's dysfunction had become the inspiration for helping other families avoid similar disasters. My name is Anissa Sullivan. I began addressing the group of parents, adult children, and family members who'd come seeking guidance, and I want to share a story about how lottery winnings taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. Money doesn't create character, it reveals it. The audience listened intently as I outlined the framework I'd developed over months of research and therapy, the warning signs of financial manipulation within families, the difference between helping and enabling, the importance of boundaries in loving relationships. When someone in your family consistently creates financial crises that become everyone else's emergency, you're not looking at bad luck. You're looking at a pattern of behavior that requires professional intervention, not family bailouts. A woman in the front row raised her hand. But what if you're worried about their safety? What if they're in real danger because of their choices? The question hit close to home. I'd struggled with the same concern during Tyler's crisis. Safety concerns are real and valid, but here's what I learned. Enabling someone's destructive behavior doesn't actually keep them safe. It just delays the inevitable consequences while putting more people at risk. I explained the concept of tough love versus abandonment, the importance of supporting treatment over supporting addiction, and the difference between helping someone face their problems versus helping them avoid consequences. The hardest lesson was understanding that I couldn't love Tyler out of his addiction or criminal behavior. I could only love myself enough to stop participating in his destruction. After the workshop, I drove to my parents' house for our weekly Sunday dinner. These gatherings had become precious to me, representing the healthy family relationship we'd never had before. Tyler's arrest forced us to examine our dysfunction. My parents met me at the door with genuine smiles, the kind of greeting that had nothing to do with need or crisis. Mom had prepared my favorite meal without any special occasion, while Dad had researched articles about nonprofit management to better understand my work. "How was the workshop today?" Mom asked as we settled around the dinner table. "Powerful. There was a family dealing with almost identical issues to what we went through. Adult son with gambling problems, parents depleting retirement savings, sister being pressured to contribute her inheritance. "Did you tell them about Tyler?" Dad asked. I shared our experience without using names. The important thing was helping them see the pattern and understand their options. We talked about the foundation's growth, my plans for expanding programming, and their own continued healing journey. Both parents had maintained their commitment to therapy and financial counseling, rebuilding their savings, while establishing healthy boundaries with all their children, including me. We got a letter from Tyler, Mom mentioned toward the end of dinner. Tyler was 8 months into a 5-year federal sentence, housed at a minimum security facility that offered addiction treatment and vocational training. His letters home had gradually evolved from self-pity and blame to genuine accountability and remorse. He's completed the first phase of his gambling addiction treatment program, Dad explained. His counselor says he's making real progress in understanding how his behavior affected others. "How do you feel about his progress?" I asked. "Cautiously hopeful," Mom replied, "but also realistic. Dr. Santos helped us understand that Tyler's recovery is his responsibility, not ours." The healthy skepticism was a dramatic change from their previous pattern of unconditional belief in Tyler's promises to change. "He asked if he could write to you directly," Dad added. "He wants to apologize for everything he put you through." I'd been expecting this request for months. Tyler's prison counselor had mentioned that making amends was part of his treatment program. "I'm willing to read a letter from him, but I want to be clear about my boundaries. Tyler's recovery is important, but it doesn't erase the consequences of his choices. He'll need to earn trust through consistent actions over time, not just words." "We understand," Mom said. "We've learned the same lesson." After dinner, I sat in my parents' backyard watching the sunset and reflecting on how drastically our family had changed. The crisis that had threatened to destroy us had ultimately saved us by forcing us to confront painful truths about our relationships. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, my college friend who'd supported me through the worst of the family crisis. "How's the newly functional family doing?" "Still healing, but genuinely hopeful," I texted back. "Turns out almost losing everything taught us what was actually worth keeping." The foundation had processed applications from 43 families in just 6 months, providing everything from financial counseling to legal referrals to family therapy connections. Every success story reminded me that our family's pain had purpose when it helped others avoid similar destruction. But the most profound change was personal. I'd learned to trust my instincts about people's character, to set boundaries without guilt, and to understand that love sometimes required saying no to people who expected yes. The fake lottery ticket had been a tool, but the real transformation came from choosing truth over comfort, accountability, over enablement and self-respect, over family approval. As I prepared to leave my parents' house, Dad handed me an envelope. "Tyler's letter," he explained. "Read it when you're ready. No pressure either way." Driving home, I thought about the woman at today's workshop who'd asked how to know when someone's addiction had become the family's addiction. The answer was simple: when their crisis becomes your emergency, when their choices determine your happiness, when enabling them feels easier than watching them face consequences. My lottery win had given me financial security, but the crisis it revealed had given me something more valuable: the knowledge that I deserved relationships based on mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. That night, I finally opened Tyler's letter. It was 3 pages of genuine remorse, detailed accountability for his crimes, and specific plans for making amends to his victims. No manipulation, no blame shifting, no requests for money or sympathy. "I understand why you can't trust me," he'd written. "I understand why our family needed to be protected from my choices. I hope someday I can earn the chance to be your brother again, but I know that's my responsibility to prove, not your obligation to give." The letter represented real change, the kind that could only come from facing genuine consequences and doing the hard work of recovery. I started drafting my response. Tyler, I'm proud of the work you're doing to understand and address your addiction. When you're ready to continue this conversation after your release and after you've made meaningful restitution to your victims, I'll be here. But our relationship moving forward will be based on your actions, not your promises. As I finished writing, I realized the most important lesson the lottery had taught me, winning $5 million, was nothing compared to winning back my self-respect and my family's health. Sometimes the biggest jackpot isn't money. Sometimes it's learning who you really are when everything else falls apart. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own well-being? How did you handle pressure to sacrifice your success for someone else's poor choices? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe for more real-life stories about family dynamics and personal growth, and share this with anyone who might be struggling with similar situations. Thank you for listening, and remember, you deserve relationships that celebrate your successes rather than exploiting them. Until next time, take care of yourselves.